Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Holistic Human Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Gena Bradshaw, and today we have a very special guest, Vanessa Steil, and I am so excited to have her on. And we met through one of my financial advisors. And she was like, you got to connect with Vanessa. She told me about your story and we have a lot in common. And I'm like, okay, I got to talk with her. So I hit you up and we connected and it was so great. And you're well diverse in the wellness industry. You do a lot of other things, but I will obviously let you introduce yourself. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. And I'm so happy that you hit me up on the gram.
Yes. P.S. Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
So it's Steil.
Steil. Okay. I knew that. I said it and I was like, no, wait, it's Steil. Because I remember what you do.
Yes.
On your website. Okay. So good. Anyways, everyone, it's Vanessa Steil.
Well, again, I'm really happy to be here. And I think you and I do have such a similar backstory. I'm happy to get into mine and kind of share how I ended up in my health and wellness journey.
Let's start with the journey. How did you get to where you're at today? Obviously start with what you're doing currently and then kind of take us back to, Vanessa's journey.
Sounds like a good plan. So currently I like to call myself a multifaceted entrepreneur. I started my own creative agency managing social media, public relations, and content creation for clients in the equestrian, healthcare, and wellness space. So that's what I'm doing primarily. In addition to that, I also co-founded an online community called the Hospital Bar, which is a community for caregivers of all kinds, because I myself am a millennial caregiver to my 95-year-old grandmother. And in addition, I run a successful lifestyle blog called Living in Style, hence the last name.
Yes.
And the blog actually came out of my diagnosis with thyroid cancer in 2013 at the age of 26. So this year, I'm actually celebrating 10 years of survivorship, which...
Me too.
Oh, wow. I don't think I knew that.
10 years. Me neither.
I'm 10 years in June.
Same.
Oh, wow. Okay. See? So all the things we know about each other, we're still learning things right now.
Yes.
So when I was diagnosed, I actually had no signs or symptoms. I was going to my gynecologist for what I thought was going to be a routine exam. And he had asked if he could perform a neck check, which caught me off guard because I had been seeing an ear, nose, and throat specialist for about a decade at that point. And I had never had a neck check done. So he did the neck check, and then he asked if anybody had ever told me that I had a nodule on the right side of my thyroid. So I was surprised that he found something, but not immediately alarmed. My grandmother, who was in her 80s at that point, I knew had a benign thyroid nodule that they just watched. So I wasn't really expecting too much to come of it. He recommended that I go for blood work, have a neck ultrasound, and just make an appointment with an endocrinologist as a precaution. So I went through all of that. My blood work showed that I had subclinical hypothyroidism. So I had an underactive thyroid, which I wasn't showing signs of yet because it was still in the early stages. And then when we did the neck ultrasound, my thyroid nodule was actually over 1 centimeter. So we went and did a fine needle aspiration biopsy after that. And then I saw an endocrinologist who gave me the news that it was papillary thyroid carcinoma, which happens to be the most common type of thyroid cancer, accounting for approximately 90% of all cases diagnosed. Fortunately, has a fairly high success rate in terms of doing a thyroidectomy, having your thyroid removed, and potentially having to do a course of radioactive iodine as a treatment afterward.
That, I believe, was also my quote unquote diagnosis. But yours, okay, so my guess is that your gynecologist saw something going on with your neck, maybe that you couldn't have seen.
So it was funny. He actually didn't see anything physically on my neck, but I remember when I had a neck surgeon in New York City, he said that a lot of millennials don't have primary care physicians. So the gynecologist actually performs neck checks because otherwise things like that wouldn't get discovered. And it makes sense for a gynecologist because if you're trying to have children, the thyroid plays an important role in getting pregnant and also sustaining a healthy pregnancy. So it kind of makes sense that they're taking on that role. But in my case, it was very, fortunate because I had something that I didn't know was even happening in my body.
Right, right. Very similar story with myself. So then as you go through this process, what was like the next step?
So after I went through all the testing and I initially got my diagnosis, it was hard. I felt like there were the days where I wanted to do all this research and find a head and neck surgeon and go and have the surgery. And then there were days where the research was scaring me because I was coming across these horror stories. And I felt like, wow, this is going to change my life forever. And maybe my diagnosis is wrong. And maybe I need to get a second opinion. And I actually did that. I got 3 second opinions.
Good, I'm glad.
Yeah, no, I really, that experience is actually what led me to eventually become a board certified patient advocate, because I realized how important it was to advocate for myself and to find a care team that I felt comfortable with and that explained what was going to happen and made me, feel like everything was going to be okay and I had the right team behind me. So I took about 2 months, I think, from my date of diagnosis to when I actually went for surgery, but I found a great care team in New York City. I had a wonderful surgeon who was incredibly thorough. And actually, he removed 6 lymph nodes in addition to doing 6 in addition to doing my thyroidectomy. And when he removed them, he did it preventatively. He didn't see anything with the lymph nodes, but when pathology came back a week later, one of them actually showed signs that the cancer had spread. So I always felt like I was so grateful that I went to him, and there was just something about, like, I knew he was going to take the lymph nodes out regardless. And there was something about that really made me feel very comfortable and that he was the right choice.
Where did you go?
I went to Weill Cornell.
Oh, okay, cool. I went to Memorial Sloan Kettering. I'm glad. Okay, so now did they take the whole thyroid out?
Yeah, so I did a total thyroidectomy with central neck dissection. So they took everything.
Including lymph nodes?
Yes, including the lymph nodes on the right side of my thyroid. And I didn't do a course of radioactive iodine. I was also diagnosed with an autoimmune condition called Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So we always sort of track my antithyroglobulin, which, if you don't have an autoimmune condition, they're looking at your thyroglobulin levels to see if they are elevated, which could indicate cancer or potential recurrence. So for me, we look at my autoimmune, my Hashimoto's, and we kind of track from there. But I didn't do a full course afterward. We kind of adopted a wait and see approach. And fortunately for me, my numbers were pretty much stable until about 2017. And then in 2017, I went to do a whole body scan to see if there was any spread or uptake in the neck region.
How did you feel doing that?
I was really nervous about that. I think I was probably more nervous about that at that time than I was like initially with the surgery. I think for me, after the surgery, I felt like I was able to close the chapter a little bit. And then like that sort of reopened the wound when I started to see the numbers increasing on my blood work. And I was like, oh, there might be something going on here. So that was like a really stressful time period. Fortunately, it was, nothing other than the autoimmune condition flaring up. They didn't see any signs of a cancer recurrence, but it reminds you that you're a cancer survivor and you can't take that status for granted. And every day is a different day. And your status can change in an instant.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, literally, I, had cancer at age 3.5, blood cancer, leukemia. And then at age 20, I was diagnosed with quote unquote thyroid cancer.
Yeah.
And thankfully mine was encapsulated. I did not have to do radioactive iodine. I only had to do surgery. They took the left side of my thyroid out. So I still have the right, no medication.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Are you on
Yeah,
any?
no, I'm on medication.
Yeah. Okay. So, and I talk to a lot of people that have thyroid issues / end up getting thyroid cancer. And I think it's super important for people to understand, like, don't wait and really start to take care of yourself today, because you can change the outcome. Like, you can heal your body. So my question for you is, what kind of person were you before you were diagnosed with thyroid cancer?
I was always an active person. I was growing up, I was a competitive figure skater before becoming an avid equestrian. So all throughout middle school and high school, I rode competitively. I was away at horse shows. But aside from that, I was active in terms of, I like being outdoors. I did a lot of yoga and exercise. And that's something that I've continued well into my adult life. I took about 15 years off from riding, going to college, coming back to New York. And I just started riding again consistently. So now I'm celebrating my 1 year riding anniversary. But in addition to all that, I like to do a lot of like boutique fitness classes. I do kickboxing, yoga, Pilates. I like to call them my sanity strolls, but I like to make sure that I get out every day and get into the sun, get some vitamin D, and be able to take a walk in my neighborhood. So I think it's really important, anything you can do for your mental and your physical health, to get outside and to kind of be out in nature, take a break away from your screens, away from your work, and kind of, find that self-care time. I think that's, it's important for cancer survivors, but really it's important for anybody.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, exercise, nutrition. So, emotions and energy play a huge role.
Yep.
Now, before cancer Vanessa, after cancer Vanessa, what kind of person was she like?
It's so funny. I always felt like I never really found my voice. There were so many things I didn't want to say. I didn't want to experience the emotions, feel the emotions. And when I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer, I vividly remember that like people would ask that, they knew I had gone for testing, they knew something was discovered, and I could never say that I had thyroid cancer. Like I had made it too personal. Like to me, in my mind, it was something that was happening like in somebody else's body. And in writing about my story now for a decade, like that's a piece that kind of crept into my writing that I really hadn't explored, that I was like, oh, that's right. Like I used to text people and just say, it's thyroid cancer, as though it was its own entity. It wasn't in my body. And I think going through cancer and having to advocate for myself with doctors and having to do my own research, and, at the end of the day, hopefully you have family and friends and a community that rallies around you. But at the end of the day, you're the one going into the operating room. You're the one on the table, that's having surgery. You're the one that goes through recovery. So much of it is on you. And I think that gave me such an internal strength, because I felt like, I have a voice, I can speak my truth. And that really led me into the world of advocacy and led me to sit for the board certified patient advocacy exam so that I can help other people, because I think it's so important for everyone to become their own advocates and to be confident and to be sure of themselves, and to not let somebody sort of take that power away, that, oh, because you're a doctor, you don't know, you don't understand. The doctors know the anatomy of the body better than we probably do, but we know how we feel. We know how we're supposed to feel and what's normal to us. And I think it's so important to empower patients to really be able to speak their truth when it comes to taking control of their own care.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. Patient advocacy is so, so, so important. And like you said, honestly, even though they're doctors, I'm sorry, but they don't know everything. They don't know everything about you. They don't know how you're sleeping. They don't know how you're eating. They don't know what your lifestyle and your stress is like. And what's so interesting, and I really like that you brought up this point of not having a voice. So I don't know if you're familiar with the energy system, the
Yes.
chakra
Yeah,
systems.
chakras. Yep.
Yeah, yep. So throat chakra, and I also can resonate with you on this. I never spoke about my story unless I was like kind of forced to by like my parents, but shout out to them because it made me so much better in the end. And like the emotional aspect behind it, it was kind of like, yeah, I did it, like warrior status, like keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. And then I finally had to take a second and be like, oh, like I need to like go back and do the healing work around that. Like the inner child stuff, and also the trauma of the surgery that you go through, because that was rough. And I
Yeah.
know that was a rough healing. The recovery behind it, the emotional aspect behind it. So when I started learning about the human energy system and the throat chakra, oh no. So everything is connected, and the throat chakra is connected to your thyroid gland. And I'm like, oh wow. Not to say that this is the only thing, but it definitely plays a role in being able to speak your voice and communicate,
Yeah.
especially emotionally too.
It's true. And I think when you go through trauma in general, like you're a horse with blinders on. I know for me, I didn't really want to have conversations about how I was feeling or how I was doing. I wanted to do the research. I wanted to find my surgeon. It was like, kind of like a monopoly board almost. Like you want to pass go and like get to the next box and keep it moving. And I think it took me years after my thyroid cancer diagnosis to really verbalize those emotions. Like it took me a really long time. And part of the reason why I started Living in Style, why I started the blog, was because I wanted to have a cathartic outlet to share my story. But I also didn't want people to experience what I went through with, like, you consult Dr. Google, which, by the way, my endocrinologist told me to avoid making this a research project. So that fell on deaf ears. But, you consult Dr. Google and you hear these horror stories of, like, I had a thyroidectomy and, I never felt good again. And I was on these meds, and it was so crippling. It was so paralyzing. Like, it really got me into my own head thinking, like, no, this isn't me. This isn't my diagnosis. Like, this is somebody else. So I really wanted to have a place where I can share that story of, like, this is what I went through. These were the steps that I took, how I was feeling, the resources that helped me. And this is how I made it out on the other side. And my story was also included in a cancer survivor book called Tough: Women Who Survived Cancer. And I think it's a great resource to kind of read those stories, read those positive outcomes for people, because, when you're a patient, it is so isolating. Hearing the words, I have cancer, it's devastating. And again, like, your community can only do so much. I think a lot of it is, that internal strength and being able to process your emotions in a healthy way. And I think reading positive stories, joining online support groups, like connecting with people who have been there, who can really understand the feelings that you're feeling, is so important. So I wanted to contribute to that narrative because I felt like it was missing in my own story.
Yeah. And to be honest, I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was going through thyroid cancer, like, I didn't know anything. I didn't know what research to do. I didn't know where to even start. And then, I think, well, definitely when, there was some groups and communities around, of course, but I feel like now it's more prominent and,
Yeah.
playing a role into those communities, it has such a rippling effect on so many other people and their healing journey, which I honestly, that's why I do what I do. And I'm sure you do the same. And yeah, I just have to commend you for that, because it's really tough on the, you want to be able to thrive in life, not just survive. That's something that I truly, truly like to talk the talk and walk the walk.
Yeah. And I felt like I wanted my story not to just sort of like die with me. Like, okay, I went through it and, close the chapter. I really wanted to be able to put those resources to use to help other people. And it's still to this day, like, when somebody reaches out on Instagram or finds one of my old posts talking about my health, like, and reaches out and, like, wants advice or guidance, like, that's why I do what I do. Because I think it's very easy to, like, go through it and then you're like, okay, I'm good, I'm cured, and you kind of move on. And that works for a lot of people. But I think for me, like, just those feelings of feeling so lost and helpless, like, really stuck with me. And I was like, I don't want other people, to go through that.
Right. Now, you started going through this wellness journey. And obviously that's evolved over time, but what are some of the things that you currently do to keep, obviously the fear level down and keep yourself healthy? What are some tips?
Yeah. For me, so like I mentioned, obviously I went through thyroid cancer, but I've also been a caregiver for over a decade now. And, recently my grandmother transitioned from living independently to moving into a long-term care facility. And that's obviously been difficult for both of us. And there's been a lot of stress on me in terms of, selling her condo, dealing with finances, hiring an elder care attorney, all while working full time and, managing my own care. And that was part of the reason why I decided to transition out of having a regular 9 to 5 and to kind of do something on my own, because I felt like I was really experiencing burnout. I'd go into the office, the social worker and the nursing home would call me. I'd have to run out. Like, there was just constantly a crisis. So I needed to lower the stress in my own life because I was concerned about the effects that would have on my health overall. And for me as a cancer survivor, and it's something I've written about a lot on the blog, is this term of scanxiety, this very real fear that patients have, cancer patients and survivors have, when they have to go for scans. And obviously I had that experience in 2017. So I know firsthand how scary it can be when, like, a number is out of the reference range and, like, you kind of go back to that spot of when you were diagnosed. So for me, a lot of it is like keeping physically active. Having a structured routine so that I don't have this downtime, but, like, doing things that I'm really passionate about. So right now, building my business, taking care of my grandmother, getting to the barn as often as I can, and being around horses, which I feel like, again, it's, so cathartic to be around them. It's, that's like my therapy. And just doing things that really ground me and bring me peace. Like, I just went back to boxing, which is something I really haven't done since the pandemic. And it's like, oh, this is great. Like, I feel like it's a little bit of the old me pre 2020. And kind of just surrounding myself with those people. Like, your vibe attracts your tribe. So surrounding myself with people that are in the health and wellness space and want to be good for my mental health and sort of understand all the things that I go through. So I think that's really important.
Absolutely. I'm so happy you said that. And I am so glad that we connected, because
I know, me too.
I mean, what are the odds we're both celebrating our 10 years
That's so, I don't think I knew that. Yeah,
Me neither.
I don't think we touched on it, and that was another thing with starting the blog. It was funny when I started it, in 2014, I didn't even have a Facebook page. I never did social media. I never wanted to put my life out there. And through doing that, it's been such an incredible experience, not only opportunities to work with brands, but to meet other advocates, to meet other patients, and people that I never would have come across. And we live locally, we live in the same place.
Yep.
So it's amazing. Maybe we would have run into each other at a wellness class somewhere, but it was really through, I think I met your financial advisor at a networking event, and then she connected you with me. So it's just that, 6 degrees of separation.
I love it. So cool.
It's great.
Excuse me. What got you into, because you mentioned your current business, the online marketing, correct? What got you into that? Because you said you weren't into social media at one point. So what kind of got you into going down that route?
Well, the blog really opened up a lot of doors, doing social media for myself, doing PR for myself, eventually led me to work with a nonprofit on Long Island. And I was doing social and PR for them. And then, now I've kind of grown my following and my brand, and I've been able to really help others do the same. So for me, when I was looking not to have a 9 to 5, it was a natural progression to just keep doing what I'm doing in the social media, public relations and content creation space. And I love creating content and I love writing. So it kind of just led me down that path from having the blog. And I always say, in a weird way, that was the silver lining of my thyroid cancer diagnosis, because it led me into things that I wanted to be doing, and it allowed me to be more creative. And I think that helped with my recovery. But overall, I'm very into letting the universe kind of help you along the way. And I went to school for political science. Obviously, I decided not to go to law school and pursue that path. But now I'm able to use my advocacy skills more on the policy side and help legislate, hopefully for better care for caregivers. So I feel like everything kind of comes full circle in a way.
It absolutely does. And I had full body chills when you were saying that. So it's confirming that is absolutely your silver lining. And it's cool because it's you said before, where you didn't have a voice, and now you are expressing your voice in a very creative, passionate way, which kudos to you, because some people wouldn't follow that.
Thank you. Yeah. And I think it's also interesting, I didn't have my voice when I had my diagnosis, but yet through my advocacy work, I'm also trying to help other people find their voice and feel confident using it. I think that's the other thing. Sometimes people have their voice, but they just feel I shouldn't say it. I can't say it. And it's no, just use your voice, take that power back, because everybody needs to be their own advocate. That is just something that's so important. And you need to feel confident using those skills.
Hands down. I've heard horror stories,
Yeah, same.
And, it's a little frightening, but I think that with the number one, information you're providing, information I provide, and in general, people doing their research and actually understanding their body, because I think that is absolutely key. Understanding your body, knowing your own energy, so that you can figure out the best route possible for you.
Yeah, it's true. I remember learning about that in nutrition school, about people don't know how good their bodies are designed to feel. And if you don't know, then it's also hard to realize when something is off.
Absolutely. And again, that's why I love industry that we're in the space, because I mean, it's, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. That's it, you know, and you're going to be paying astronomically in the end, including potentially your life, continuing down a specific route of just neglecting your body, which is a temple, and you have to cater to it. You have to. So yeah, I'm so thrilled that you were able to come on and share your story. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I mean,
Yeah.
and we'll have to celebrate our 10-year cancerversary in June.
Yes, I am so excited for that. We need like a wellness day.
Yes, we definitely do.
That'll be fun. Cool.
That'll
We're
be
planning it. So, as we wrap up, do you have any words of wisdom for the listeners?
I think I would just say, trust your gut in every circumstance, even if it's scary, even if it kind of pushes you out of your comfort zone. I always say great things don't come from comfort zones. And, you know, I look back on my own life, and at the time when I was diagnosed, I was so focused on like, what is my career going to be? I graduated college. I don't know what I want to do. And then I got thyroid cancer. And, you know, you don't really think your career is going to come from something like that. But it just made me sort of re-examine what I wanted to do, which a lot of it centered around this idea of being creative and creating content. And it was something I had never thought of. Like 10 years ago, being a content creator, blogger wasn't exactly a job. But I was able to teach myself enough skills that I parlayed it into a profession. And I think it's kind of grown from there. So I think just trusting yourself and your gut. And if you can do that, you know, it spills into being an advocate. You know, if you're confident in who you are and what you bring to the table, then, you know, you're going to be able to speak up. You're going to be able to understand, you know, what the doctor's telling you and what you need to convey to the doctor to get the care you need.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think that was great. Where can people find you?
So I'm on social media at Living in Style. Style is spelled STEIL. And the blog is also Living in Style, which is livinginstyle.com.
Thank you so much. Guys, if you enjoyed this episode, like, share, subscribe, share it with a friend, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.